Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone to IE 206 Engineering Economy, and this is Chapter 7 Rate of Return Analysis, and it is going to be for a single alternative only. We are not going to use it for multiple alternatives. It is very simple chapter, and it is very unique chapter that is its application. It is very common to be used, and also its method, it is unique to be implemented. It is extended or based on the chapter 5 and 6, but is in a different way. In the rate of return, this is the first time where we calculate the interest rate or the rate of return. We used to calculate the value of money as we did in chapter 2, 5, and 6. And we used to also, or we have one time, we calculated the time as we did in chapter 5, in the payback period. This is the first time where we calculate the interest, which is always was given in the questions, but today is going to be assumed that it is unknown. And what typical case you think that the interest rate is going to be unknown? Can you give me an example of a case where you have the income and the cost, but the interest rate is unknown? A practical example where we can face this or where we can use it. Anyone to participate and give an example? Okay, where we find a case where is the inflow and outflow is given, payments and revenue are given, but the interest is not given. Yes, Ahmed?
Assalamu alaikum. I will try to explain, Doctor. Maybe when they give you the income and he asks you after you collect the total amount of money you have get, he will ask you how much the interest after you collect all or analyze all the rate of return. He will ask you about the interest.
Okay, good. A typical example, thank you, Ahmed. For that case, if you have seen a TV show called Shark Tank, or I think there is an Arabic version for that. It was for a few times they have showed in the TV. I don't really recall that name in the Arabic version, but if you search in Shark Tank TV show, it was based on investors, مستثمرين. They come as a judgment jury or a committee for participants who have the innovative ideas or innovative projects, and those investors select among those participants someone to invest their money on their ideas or their project. So the first, or usually the question that they discuss at the end is the rate of return or the percentage. You as an investor, you want to know what is going to be the percentages of the rate of return for اللي هو العوائد that is going to be for you periodically, whether monthly or yearly. So this is a very important question that you would like to know before you start your investment. What is going to be the rate of return for that investment? I invested with 100,000. What is the rate that I'm going to be expected for that investment yearly? 1%, 2%, 3% cost and the revenue that will be for that business. So I can end up with having that rate is going to be the one I can accept it to start my investment. So the rate of return from the investor or the lender اللي هو المستثمر أو يعني مقترض, vantage point interest rate from the borrower perspective. The interest rate, always we have talked about that in chapter 1. It is from the borrower, and the rate of return for the lender اللي هو المستثمر أو المقترض. We also refer to the rate of return as a ROI, return on investment, or IRR, interest rate or internal rate of return, PI, the profitability index, and all of those are meaning the same as the rate of return. Okay, the definition, and what we care about the definition is really more than the wording, is in calculating the rate of return, we need to equalize the cost and the revenue, so the sum of them will be 0, and at that point we can find the rate of return, and from there we can judge if the interest being or the rate is being increased, then the return or the revenue will be increased. If it's being reduced, then the cost will be increased. So it is the definition. It shows that the rate paid on unpaid balance of borrowed money. Unpaid balance, that's mean مبالغ غير مدفوعة للقرض. يعني have taken a loan from bank and you start your payments 2 or 3 months later, you paid only 3,000 out of the 300,000. So the remaining out of the 300,000 that you owe to the bank, that rate you are going to pay based on for the coming month or the coming year is going to be the rate of return for the bank. And it is vice versa. If it is rate of return for a business that you are going to invest on, so it will be the rate earned, not paid, earned on unrecovered balance, because you invested with money and that money start to generate income or generate profit to you, and out of the original investment you have paid, if you applied that on a periodic basis, which is monthly or yearly, the rate of return will be representing that amount remain from the original the payment or for the payment that you will receive periodically. To make it easier, we can say that equalize the cost and the revenue and put them all in sum and equalize them to 0. Once the cost and revenue they become 0, at that point you can calculate the rate of return where it balances the cost and the revenue. And at that point we can judge for that business if we are going to or if we want to make more profit, then we can increase the rate of return, or we can reduce it to generate more cost. Now, depend if you are designing a financial product for a bank, you want to generate or increase the revenue to the bank, but it's going to be a cost to the consumer, and it's going to be vice versa. If you are going to invest, it is going to be increased as a payback to you, but it will be cost to the cooperation that you are investing on. Numerically, the rate of return is very simple to be calculated. Before we go to the calculation for the rate of return, we need to emphasize that, again, the interest rate we refer to as an unpaid balance if you are taking a loan, and unrecovered balance if you are taking an investment, and the rate of return is not the interest rate earned on the original loan, but on the remaining amount. On the remaining amount, okay? The if the interest found to be greater than the minimum attractive rate of return, then this investment is justified. If it is equal, then it is justified, but there is no profit to be expected out of that. But if it's less, then this investment is not justified. And the minimum attractive rate of return, this is where is the investors usually trigger or think about, because if you have found the rate of return when the cost equals 0 be 5%, and the minimum attractive rate of return, it is for example greater than that, then you are going to have not economical justification to invest on. But if it was less and the rate of return at the equilibrium was greater, then that's mean it is going to convince you that to invest on. And if they are equal, also it's up to you, because usually, especially in startup business, you are not expecting to have a high rate of return. If you could pay your bills at the beginning of the first 1 year, then it's fine. Then start growing your business and generating more rate of return or interest rates out of that business. The interest rate can be coming in a values from minus 100%, that's mean it's a total loss, to an infinity, um, uh, infinity in the plus side, which is mean multiplication of the original interest. What we do in solving the rate of return problems, what we do is using chapter 5 and 6, but we don't do any LCM or study period, because we're dealing only with a single alternative here. We have to stick to either using chapter 6, which is converting all the values to annual, or chapter 5, where converting all the values to present. As soon you find all the revenue, which is the inflow, converted to present or annual, and you find all the outflow or the cost converted to present, then you subtract them or you equalize them to 0. Once they are equal to 0, it is going to be easy just to place or find the interest rate that is unknown by using a simple technique, which is all we use it, the trial error, اللي هو التجربة والتكرار أو التجربة والخطأ والتكرار until you find the right answer. So we will skip that part and come to that later, but I would like to show you an example. This is an example typical to the same examples we have used in chapter 5 and 6, where we ask to find the present worth for those values, or to find the annual worth for those values. But what is the difference here? The question is asking find the rate of return. As you can see, I hope the pointer is working, that at the end of the question it says find the rate of return, and you can see in the cash flow the rate of return or the interest rate is unknown, so it needs to be founded. How we do, based on the explanation I have just said about converting all these values to present or annual, you select and this is up to you. If you want to use present, so you convert all these values to present. 500,000, it's already present, no need to be converted, but you convert the 10,000 and the 700. And pay attention, those are inflow with a plus sign. This one is outflow, okay? You will ask me, okay, how I'm going to convert them if I don't have the interest? What value I will place in the table? Do the first step in the engineering economy, the first step that you do formulation. Remember the definition. Formulation is you write the formula for the converting those values to present or annual. But instead of using exact value of interest rate, we leave it as a simple need to be found. How do we do that? We do that in this way. We selected to change all the values to present, and we use the formulation, and this is, we call it the formulation. You can see the interest is unknown, the interest is unknown, and you equalize this equation to 0. You have to use the inflow with a plus sign and the outflow, as we did before, with a minus sign. Now we use the trial and error. What the trial and error means? That you are going to assume an interest rate. You are going to assume. Now let's say your assumption is to use 5%, then you will apply 5% to this equation and you will get a value. Once you get the value, you will find whether this value is minus or plus. If it is minus, then you try to change and increase that interest to increase it until you change the value here from minus to plus. How we will do that? We will do it in this way. We have applied the 5% to the equation or to the formulation, and it is found to be a plus sign at the end. So the value of this formulation was to be found 6,956. Why we did increase the percentage and we didn't reduce it? Because was the initial cost at the beginning was relatively high compared to um, the inflow, because the inflow is going to be multiplied with the fractions, and that is need to be increasing the amount here compared to those. So we need to find a values that multiplied uh, with the the inflow to reduce it. So what you do, the first step you do, if you have confusion about what is the next interest rate should I use, because the formulation it could be long and you cannot identify where the largest amount, whether it's the inflow or the outflow, is to use trial and error. Means try to use 4% and try to use 6%, assuming that you have selected at the beginning 5. Okay, if when you select the 4% is giving you a larger value than the 6,000 in a positive, then you don't need to go further in the reduced numbers like 3, 2, 1. But if the 4% give you less value than the 5%, then that's mean by decreasing the 5% you will achieve the zero, or you will achieve the negative sign and the zero will be placed between them. If no, then try to use the other side, which means you are going to use 6% or 7% and apply it. If the sign of the final value still, I mean, it's reduced, then even if it was not in minus here, let's say it was found to be 2,000. Okay, that's mean if I'm going to increase to 6, from 6 to 8, that's mean I'm going to achieve the minus. So you need to find and apply every time interest rate randomly, but in a systematic way. In the beginning, select an interest, any interest rate. And what I usually do in the exams to save your time, I give you a range. I give you a range. And how you say that range, you are not going to see it in the question, obviously. But when I announce the interest I'm going to bring in the questions in the exam, that's mean you are going to be among or between the smallest one I brought to you until the largest one. So you start with something in the middle between them and try to use and apply something to the right side, which is larger than that percentage, and other on the left side, smaller to that percentage. When you see the sign or the value is getting changed, if it was positive, then you are looking to be changed to negative. So you are looking for something that makes it more smaller. If you are finding the value from the beginning for percentage you have applied with a minus sign, then you want to find something that bring you to the positive. And why we are doing that? We want to find where is the percentage that give us the zero between the cost and the revenue. So for example, in this case, we found the sign is being flipped between the 5% and the 6%. And in this case, that's mean the percentage of the value 0, it fall between 5 and 6. So imagine if I'm giving you in the exam all the percentages that going to be covered in the exam, I equal 5, 10, 15, 20, 40. Then those percentages going to be used in all the exam questions. And why I'm giving that? So you have only next to you the tables related to those percentages. Salih, just give me and finish this point and we will take questions. So if I have started with the I5 until I40 and I give you random interest rate, that's mean in one of the questions I will bring you an interest rate with 5, and other question maybe I will bring another 5 or I will bring 10, one of the one in the list. Okay, so when you have a question of rate of return, you should have known already the interest that is going to be finding the value of 0 is going to be in the middle between those values I brought you. So it is going to be between 5 and 20. So you should have calculated from those percentages and try a larger one and try a smaller one and see where is the value is getting to be flipped between minus to plus or plus to minus, because we want to find that flip التغير من موجب لناقص أو من ناقص لموجب. In that case we can find the interest where is the equal of that formulation equal to 0, and we will go to the formulas here how to find it in a few. Let's go back and take questions before we move on. تفضل يا صالح.
لا دكتور، ارجع للشريحه اللي كنت قاعد تشرح لها.
ايوه
اخر واحده شريحه رقم 10. ايه دحين لو مثلا 7% العدد راح ينقص اكثر صح؟ و8% حينقص اكثر، يعني حيكون مثلا سالب 70 مثلا سالب.
نعم. يس.
اوكي، فانا يعني بناء عليها احدد اذا انا مع زياده النسبه قاعد اصير بالسالب ولا بالموجب.
Exactly. If you are increasing or decreasing, because sometimes the decrease it takes time. So maybe you apply 6%, it doesn't take you directly to the minus value. It may be reduced to a plus 2,000 instead of plus 6,000. Okay, so you have to increase more by 1 or 2 percentages until you get the minus. And sometimes it's really by just changing 1%. It depends on the case, and because it is random number you have selected, so in some cases it is directly being flipped. A question here is asking Hazim, saying that should I use always two values, one for plus and one for minus, and then we find a 0. Okay, the 0 where it's placed, it placed between minus and plus. And since we have found the percentage where it gives us the present worth with a plus sign, and we found the percentage where it gives us the present worth with a minus sign, that means at the middle between those two percentages, the present worth will equal to 0, and this is what we want to find. See the first line, this is what we want to find. We want to find the present worth when it's equal to 0, because when it's equal to 0, Salih, do you have questions?
ايه.
Okay, yes.
كمل شرحك معلش بعدين.
Okay, can you just take turn off the mic when we want to find the value of that interest that give us the present worth or even the annual worth. If you have selected to solve this problem with the annual, it's fine, as we said before. But to find the interest that give us the 0 at the end, that's mean the cost and the revenue, they are equalized at this interest rate, in a meaning that this is where is the equilibrium between the rate of return and the cost in terms of the percentage of the interest rate or the rate of return, depend on the case. And then as an investor, you can decide whether you go more or you go less based on that percentage. Okay, so it helps us to see where they are getting balance between the cost and the revenue. So yes, we need to find a percentage that give us plus and another percentage give us minus, and then we use the interpolation concept to find the percentage that is at 0. Yes, Saleh, now please give us your question.
طيب مكتوب تحت انه 5% بعدين اصغر من اي اصغر من 6%، مو المفروض العكس؟
An I, it is less. Why? Because the 0, it is between the 5 and the 6. The I you will find as a numerical value, it will be between 5 and 6. So it will be 5 point something, and let's say 5.999. So it is greater than 5
اي بس
as a
القانون
numerical.
مكتوب
Now what is the I? What is the I? It's found. It is found to be 5.16. Okay. Now is the 5.16 greater than 5 or not? Hello.
بس انا تخلص كلامك.
ايوه.
اوكي الدحين القانون مو مكتوب انه سالب 100% بعدين اصغر من الاي اصغر بموجب ما لا نهايه.
No.
فالمو اللي يعطي موجب يكون في اليمين.
لا. Wait. هنا if you are referring to this one, this is not it doesn't mean that it says the interest it can be to infinity and it can be to minus 100%. معناها إما خسائر ب100% أو مضاعفات في الأرباح إلى ما لا نهاية. Okay, but it is not related to the value of the interest rate here, because it brought us a minus. Because this one it brought us minus, that means it has to be here. No, here we are talking about the numerical interest rate that is going to be found. It will be placed between 5 and 6. Between 5 and 6. So it is going to be greater than 5 and less than 6. Now when you find this I, which is 5.16, this 5.16, it could be infinity or it could be minus 100% based on the case of the original amount you have invested. That was explaining the concept of the multiplication or the multiplication of the interest rate in terms of the profit or in terms of the loss. Like it's not about calculating. You have always that if it brought us minus, then it has to be less. So the I, it cannot be in the other way, whereas it is greater than 6 and less than 5, because it is placed between 5 and 6.
طب دكتور الاي دائما حتكون صفر ولا؟
Not the I يا شباب. The present worth will be 0, not the I. We want to find the present worth when all the cost and the revenue are equalized using the interest rate that is unknown, and we want to find what. So in other way, if you use 5.6 and you go to the table or to the formula and you have applied to this equation, you will get 0. And what does that mean? That means the cost, the original, plus the inflow that you are going to make with respect باعتبار 5.16 per year, it will give you a zero balance. balance. Then if you want to increase the present worth in a plus, you can judge now what percentages as an investor you should accept or say no, this is not going to be accepted. So at this point at 5.16, the inflow and the outflow, they have been summed together and equal to 0. Not the interest is 0, the present worth or the annual worth you have used is going to be adding the cost and the revenue with respect to this 5.16, it will be equal to 0. واضح؟ Yes, you assume number. As I said, you assume numbers. You start with random numbers. You write formulation. I didn't get your comment, Saleh. You start with the number here. This is the formulation. You start with number. You go with the least number I gave you in the list of interest rate provided for the exam. And then you try another one larger or less than the one you have selected and see if it is going to be changing the value from plus to minus or minus to plus to find where the interest needed, so you can find it between them. Okay, let's take it one by one. Now, first question, um, is this only for the investor and the bank? Well, it depends. If you are the one who's going to start the business, then it is going to be for you. If you are going to calculate it based on the loan that you are going to pay, also it is going to be for you. But if you look again, as we did for the interest rate and rate of return, depend. If you are the one investing, then you will look for the rate of return. If you are the one who's taking the or paying the loans, then you are the one who's finding the interest rate, not the rate of return. But they are the same calculations. The only thing is the perspective of that case. There's still some students say that's not clear. Let's explain it again. And let's read the question here step by step and explain it. The HVAC engineer for a company that constructed one of the tallest buildings in Dubai requested that 500,000 to be spent on software and how to improve the efficiency of the environmental control system. This is expected to say 10,000 per year. 10,000 per year. And pay attention, يعني this the saving, it is annual, okay, because it's per year, but is inflow, not as we used to take as an operating cost, okay. This is a good يعني example to see how the annual can be inflow for 10 years. So the project has a 10 years long in energy cost and 700,000 at the end of 10 years. That's mean a salvage value of 700,000. In the equipment refurbishment cost, find the rate of return. When it asks about finding the rate of return, it is asking about for the rate of return for the unpaid balance or unrecovered investment. Now, this is investment or unpaid balance. It is unpaid balance because, sorry, it's an unrecovered investment because he paid at the beginning. He didn't take loan. He paid at the beginning 500,000. And now this is عوائد. عوائد and recovered sorry and returned عفوا لحظة عشان and recovered balance. Yes, and recovered balance. And when we say and recovered balance, that means we are dealing with the rate of return. He invested with the 500,000 and this is going to be returns to him in 10 years, 10,000 per year and 700,000 and the last year if he's decided to go with the salvage or selling that product or project or the building. When it asks you about the finding the rate of return, he wants to find the rate that for unrecovered balance from the 500,000, okay, that makes all these cash flow values to be equal to 0. What is the rate of return for the unrecovered balance from the 500,000 and the 10,000 per year inflow and the 700,000 at the last of the project? It is going to be equal to when all these are equal to 0. Okay, so you convert all these values either to present or you convert them to annual. Once you convert them, you equalize that equation to 0. When you equalize it to 0, that means when you find the interest or the rate, you are finding the rate that pay all that cost remaining from the initial investment with the consideration of the inflow that appeared in the cash flow all together to be equal 0. So what is the percentage I need to place here that makes this cost and the revenue equal to 0? Why do we need it? Because it will help us or it will help them as an investor to know whether that percentage for the investment they have planned or estimated, is it acceptable or not acceptable? Whether the profit is going to be, let's say as we solve this example, it is 5.16. Let's say the estimated it is, let's say 5%. Okay, it is 5% and it is found to be 5.16. Now here is the question: if you are the one who is investing and that 5% it is for the unrecovered money, which is the 500,000, then it is going to be better for you to go with the one that reduce the cost for you faster. If you are the one who is paying the loans, you are going to think about it to in a way that is going to reduce the amount remain from the loan faster. Okay, if you are the one making the investment, you are thinking about how I can generate money faster to recover from the initial cost I have paid. If you are thinking in a way that I'm the one taking the loan, okay, how I can recover from the loan faster. So the percentage you are going to decide at the end, how we can judge it, where is the reference point for us? It is going to be the percentage that show us the cost and the revenue, all of them equal to 0. From there, it is easier to you to decide to go to whether which percentage is going to be more economical to you. طيب, what is the 10%? Okay, let's go to the chat box, some questions. It didn't say cost at the summit. It says this is expected to save 10,000 per year for 10 years in energy cost. save 10,000 in energy cost. When I'm going to say this amount of 500 will save you in your electrical bill, that's it's a cost or revenue. Let's say it is inflow or outflow. It will save 500 from your bill, your electric bill or your telephone mobile bill. Is it going to be inflow or outflow? عبد الصمد عبد الصمد انت اللي تجاوبني. Okay, it's inflow. Excellent. So the meaning, not the word. You have to read the sentence to understand the meaning, not taking the word cost here and assuming that it is cost. You have to understand is saving from the cost. Saving. That's mean this money saved from you for you from that cost. Now another question. 10%. Where is the 10% يا صالح؟
الشريحة رقم 9.
شريحة 9.
رقم 9 اللي قبل هي هذه 10% هذه اللي هنا.
This is not 10%. This is number of years n equal 10. This is not I. How we do the formula? Come on, guys. You still don't know how we do the formulation. The formulation for a present worth 500%, 500,000. It is already in initial cost by minus sign. No need to be converted. The 10,000. It is by plus because it's saving in the cost yearly from year 1 to 10. So plus 10,000 P given A. Why given A? Because it's annual and we want to convert it to present. I is unknown for 10 years from year 1 to 10 is not a percentage. Plus 700,000 P given F. We don't. How we convert this to present? We do. We have covered that in chapter 5. And we equalize that to 0 to find, as I said, the percentage. Let's say it is going to be as a reference for you. Now, I mean, why we found it, why we find this percentage, the rate of return, why we find it. It is going to help you to make the decision about when you sign a contract with a loan or you sign a contract with the investment, you know what is the percentage is going to be acceptable for you. They don't write a percentage that it may show you are generating money, but at the end you didn't recover from your initial investment, or you are paying more than what you get from the bank by a large number, even though it broke down to small installments. Okay, so that percentage, it is the rate of return when all these values are equal to 0. Okay, when all these values equal to 0, we know where is 5%. Okay, now we will come to that. Let's just explain now step by step. Now we have formulated and have equalized it to 0. And then we start to use trial and error. Trial and error means that we have to assume percentages. In this example, it is assumed to use 5% and find the value of that present worth at 5% found to be 6,956. Then randomly use 6%. You could apply and use 4% or 2% and see how much the present worth will equal. When he used the 6%, that's mean and he found value, it is by minus sign. That means this present worth equal to 0 between 5 and 6, because when we use the 5 it was with a plus sign, when we use the 6 it was with a minus sign, so the percentage falling between these two. How we find the percentage? We use the interpolation concept, and it is explained clearly in this slide. That's why I'm going back now to the slide, this one, because it is easier now to explain it. Is the I bigger minus the I star, which is needed to be found. I bigger minus I small equal the present worth at I bigger minus 0 over or divided by present worth at I bigger minus present worth at I small. Now pay attention, this present worth can be annual worth. Now it is up to you to use the present or the annual. If the present worth is greater than 0, then it is asked you to use a higher value of I. If it is less than 0, it is asked you to lower the value of I. If it is equal than 0, then you don't have to try. Okay? It is already founded. So, but sometimes, I'm not saying in sometimes, it happens. It is in not all the cases when you increase, it reduced. Okay? But you can use this as a guideline, um, to increase first if it was higher than 0, and you reduce if it was less than 0. In the example showed that it was higher than 0. That's why he increases the percentage from 5 to 6. But again, as I've seen some cases where this didn't happen, or it is not applied, I didn't want to say this is the only way, but you can use it. And also I'm going to think about in the exams when I bring you something that related to the same procedure. But again, for those students sometimes who go and practice other questions as extra problems, they may face some cases where the increasement doesn't mean that you are going to reduce the amount of the present worth. But in the, let's say, the majority of the cases, yes. Yes, Saleh?
دكتور يعني لما بريزنت وورد تكون قليلة الاي حتكون هي البيجر.
Yes, and I just explained that when, in most cases, we don't say in all, because I cannot say in all, in some cases it doesn't happen. I'm going to consider in bringing in the exams questions where it's really apply that when you increase the percentage, the present worth decrease as the rule here stated. But for those students, sometimes they go and practice in some examples, they may find questions that is not really following the rule here. You have other question?
تمام دحين تقريبا فهمتها.
Okay.
تمام.
Now when we say I bigger minus I star is the one that we want to find, which was in our question 5.16. I bigger mean I that is numerically bigger. Okay, don't get confused. You don't go and place I bigger, that's because this one bring you a 6,000 and this one brought you minus 35. No, look to the percentage, which one is bigger, the 6 or 5? 6 as a numerical value, so it is the I bigger minus the I star. Okay, equal the the present worth of the I bigger minus the I star, divided by I bigger, which is 6, minus I small, which is 5, the present worth of the same sequence of the I bigger, which is minus 35, minus 6,956. Okay? So let's say, to recap, that in this chapter we need to find the interest rate or the rate of return that equalize the cost and the revenue for the given problem. Using the present worth or annual worth, it is up to you, as it's stated here in the slides in the first line here, when you want to set up the present worth or the annual worth. Using the trial and error, when you use it, when you find the value at the interest, if you have found the value it is greater than 0, increase the interest until you find a minus. If you start with the interest and gives you value less than 0, reduce the interest until you get a value of plus. And that's what we are going to consider in our class, but as I said, is not applicable to all the cases, okay? But we are going to consider it even in our assessment. Then after you find the value and the plus sign and the minus sign, you use the formula here, the interpolation method, to find the interest rate that bring us the present worth at equal to 0. And when we found it here, it was 5.16 per year. That is all for this chapter. All what you need to do is to practice the trial and error and the interpolation to solve it, because other than that it was already covered in chapter 5 and 6. For example, the formulation of the present worth and the annual worth, it's been covered. The only new part for you is the trial and error. And for the conceptual or the concept questions, you expect to understand the range of the valid interest, know where it can fall between minus 100% to infinity, and the judgment tool for the interest rate or rate of return based on this comparison of the minimum attractive rate of return. If it is the interest rate greater than the minimum attractive rate of return, then it is economically justified. If it is equal, then also it is justified. If it is less than, it is not justified economically. These the concept questions you may expect, as also you need to know and understand the definition, not memorize it, and know that it's the rate is paid on the unpaid balance or on unrecovered balance, not the original payment only, or the original loan only. Okay, do you have questions for this chapter? Yes, Salih.
يا دكتور معلش آخر مرة أرجعك للمثال. دحين ال 5% وال 6% مبنية على الرينج اللي تحدده في السؤال في الاختبار، صح؟ عادي مو لازم ترجع للسلايد عادي، بس إنه
again and now this 5 and 6. yes.
ايوه ال 5% و 6% هذه تكون مبنية على الرينج اللي تحدده في الاختبار، صح؟ في السؤال نفسه.
yes I will
وأجرب كلهم وأطلع. تمام.
yes, I will give listed of percentages, and it is up to you to apply among those percentages and find where it is placed.
تساوي صفر. تمام.
Yes. Any questions? Okay. Yes, Ahmed.
الله يكرمك يا دكتور، بس نبغى نستفسر منك عن موضوع
يس على موضوع بعدين فصل الصوت. ف connection.
موضوع المد الاول يا دكتور.
Yes.
يعني تاريخ المد.
Okay. Yeah, we will talk about that. But no questions now regarding to this chapter. حاتم, yes.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام, تفضل.
يا دكتور أنا اللي هو البريزنت وورد طلع معي سالب 133.71 إذا عوضنا 5% اللي هو 5.16.
If you use 5.16 correctly, you should have get 0, not minus.
أعوض في ال
5.16. First, 5.16 is not exist in the table, so assume you have used the formulas. If you have used the formulas, then you have to use the formula correctly to calculate it right. How you applied the 5.16 in this formulation? You know how to convert this bracket? Those are not multiplied with each other.
يا دكتور حسبتها بالقانون، حسبت كذلك عند البي في فطلع لي سالب 133.71.
Hello? Yes, it's clear now. Now the question again, Fen Hatim, who was asking?
موجود يا دكتور.
Yes. Now, how did you apply the 516 to this formulation? Have you used the formula or the tables?
استخدمت الفورمولا.
The formula, then I assume there is a mistake you have done in the formulas, because this, it should be equal to 0 when you use the 516. Okay? The formula which is placed on the beginning of the tables, you have practice to use it if you want before you apply it to this case, and try it with a simple one, simple case, because you have to consider the number of years correctly, otherwise it will give you errors. Okay, another questions? Yes, it's the same way as we did for the present, we do for the annual. As we did for the present, we do for the annual. For the we call it estimating or applying the formulation and the values tables. I've seen many cases, and I remember one student asked me about a question for the final answer. Please make sure that you have used the tables correctly, or the formulas that for the table replacement. For instance, like 5.16, you may not find it in the tables you have. So you need to use the exact formula that comes at the beginning of the table, which is kind of long and needed more steps than the tables. So make sure that you have used them correctly, whether the tables or the formulas, before judging the final answer. So I ask you to go to chapter 2 and try to use some formulations for a basic formulation. Let's say the 10,000 P given A for 5% and 10%. Try to use this one with the formula and compare it with the 7.7 first before you go and apply the 15 points the 5.16. So validate using your formula instead of the tables by applying to something that you know how much it will be in using the tables, and then use the formula. Okay, And also, if you are using the tables, make sure that you have used the correct values, because I've seen some mistakes, and that will lead you to final answer with mistakes. Okay, other questions to chapter 7 before we talk about the things that uh, what questions? Questions? Abdul Samad, if you take the mic and explain, if you still have this question is not answered in my explanation, because some of the words are not coming in order. So if you take the mic, explain your questions to answer you. Okay. Okay, maybe you can later explain it, because unless if someone can explain it in behalf of the Samad. 5.16 no, it doesn't make the number of years for infinity. 5.16 basically makes the equilibrium percentage of rate of return where the cost being recovered by this amount in the exact period. In 10 years, this initial cost is being recovered by this amount in this period at 5.16%, but is not for infinity number of years. Yes, for 10 years only. Okay, did I answer your question? Tamam, ممتاز. Okay, now I assume no more questions, and I will close the recording and we discuss all the things you have in your mind.